Vacancy Legal Recruitment, a refreshingly unique and personal talent agency developed specifically for legal. Dedicated to the sector and with extensive experience working across legal services and legal technology, we bridge the gap between your requirements and top-tier legal talent. Get in touch today and say hello at vacancy.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Family Lawyer podcast. Today we are talking with Marcie Shaoul, Director of the Co-Parent Way, author of the Co-Parenting Method, and soon to be, in fact, by the time this is published, the published author of a new book on the topic as well. Great to have you on the podcast, Marcie. Thanks so much for joining.
Nice to be here, David.
Fresh from the This Morning sofa as well. You were on national television last week. The topic of conversation today is the book and the methodology that sits behind it and why it's important to practitioners as well. In the first instance, though, I wonder if you might share with us who you are and beyond the short introduction I've given you, what you do.
So I run a co-parent coaching practice. I've been doing this since 2016, and the idea behind it is to really enable parents who are separating with some or a lot of conflict to get to a place where they can work together to bring up their kids, even if they don't like each other very much. My background to that is I spent a long time working in the diplomatic service, sitting in the space, if you like, between governments and civil society and helping them to communicate well with each other. And what I learned in that space was actually sometimes you can have the same North Star, the same place that you're heading to, but you're doing it in really different ways. And part of those different ways can be the language that you use, the way that you listen to each other. Actually, if you unpack it, then often the driving forces are the same. And when I became a coach in 2016 and set up this business, I really saw the same patterns emerging. It was parents who were in conflict, didn't know how to communicate with each other, and so the conflict would escalate. And helping them unpack that and kind of go back to basics became like a really important part of the process. I'm a co-parent. I became a co-parent in 2009. That's what got me thinking about this whole co-parenting world. It's a bit like a cake. You know, you put all of those ingredients, all of that experience of leading communications departments, my own experience of communication, my coaching tools and techniques that I have, and we built out the Co-Parent Way and the Co-Parenting Method.
It's a really useful introduction. Thank you so much. I'm reflecting as you're talking on, you don't even need to be in conflict to not necessarily have a decent line of communication with somebody, do you? I mean, you look at it in a business context. Most people understand that we're going in a particular direction with a business, but we don't always communicate that particularly well between us.
No, absolutely. And the language that we use is really important. You know, how do you speak to someone in a way that they can hear you? And that's like outside, that's in co-parenting and outside of co-parenting, right? It's across everything we do in all our relationships, professional and personal. Being really aware of language, being really aware of how you communicate is absolutely critical in terms of moving forward with anything.
Which brings us neatly onto the book, The Co-Parenting Method. You've put down in writing the methodology. In the first instance, why is now the right time to do that? You say you've already been doing this for 10, 15 years.
Well, now is the right time to do it because we've got the backdrop of 3 years now of no-fault divorce, and that's kind of helps change the landscape somewhat. We've got the whole looking at language in the courts and the family courts. Language matters. It's the perfect time for this book to be written. So this is a methodology that works. This is a methodology that I've been taking clients through for a number of years. We run it through a program as well. We have an online program that we take parents through, but we need to make it accessible to everybody. Why not, I suppose, is the answer. It's really important if you've got a way through conflict after separation that you write it and enable everybody to have access to it. So that's what drove me to write the book. And what was really, really interesting, David, is how quickly the book got snapped up. So to me, that says actually there's a real need for this book. So I got an agent within 3 days. I had a publishing deal with Penguin within about 2 or 3 weeks. They were really keen to put something like this out there because they didn't think, as I didn't, that there was anything in the space that really promoted that. And indeed, the president said the same thing.
Well, that's a rather useful intro to the fact that Sir Andrew McFarlane has written the foreword to the book. He, of course, has recently published this guidance as well for the courts on, particularly on children and thinking about children in the courts. How important was it for you that he wrote that foreword?
That was probably the most important thing that could have happened for me with this book. It was firstly an honor, and secondly, it was really mind-blowing that he read the book, wrote the foreword, and wrote what he wrote in the foreword. He fully endorsed the book. He said that nothing like it had ever been written before. He called it inspirational. I'm not sure I could have wished for more than that, really.
I want to move on to the methodology. What is the co-parent way? Give us in a nutshell the idea behind it.
It's a simple 6-step method that gets parents to a place where they can communicate without conflict, so they can bring up their children together, so their kids can have a happy, stable childhood. It's not about making parents friendly. It's about providing them with the practical tools that they need to be able to continue to work together after they've separated. And it's 6 steps because 6 steps feels quite manageable. And we take parents through the 6 steps, but using really practical tools, because, we could talk about this, we could talk about why it's important, but unless we give a framework and something to anchor parents that they can start using straight away, there's almost no point. When you're in that situation, and I've been in that situation, your world has been turned upside down, you're full of very strong emotion. It's very hard to know which way is up and how to move forward. So I wanted to write a very practical guidebook, I suppose, to help parents through that. So we start them off in step 1 with this idea of moving them from this short-term mindset that they probably are in, where it becomes a little bit like, I want to win, or I want that to happen for me, and move them into a long-term mindset. And we do that because we need to get through to parents that actually co-parenting is something you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, because you'll be at weddings, graduations, potentially co-grandparents with your ex. And that's not something to be taken lightly. This is not a sprint. This is many, many marathons. And we need to give parents the tools to train for that, to be able to sustain that. So after we've got them into that mindset and help them understand why it's important, and given them this understanding that, we can only change ourselves. We can't really change our ex. And I don't have a magic wand, right? So this is not about you read the book, you can change your ex. No, sorry. This is about you read the book and we can tweak our own behavior to make the situation better. And then we move them into managing strong emotions, right? Some very practical, grounded tools to help not ignore the emotions, but to put them to one side in order to have enough of a conversation to be able to parent together. The book helps explain that in just a very kind of easy to understand way, why it's important, what's driving some of those things. And then straight into boundaries, because boundaries, when you've separated from somebody, the boundaries have completely changed, the playing field's completely changed. How do you redefine that? What is it that you need to do in order to keep yourself safe, or in order to make sure your kids are all right, but in order to not also intrude on your ex's life, and the importance of that your kids have a perspective in this, your ex has a perspective in this, whether you like it or not, keeps parents' feet firmly on the ground. That's why this is so important. Then you go into step 4, which is possibly the biggest step, the most crucial step, is communicating without conflict. And that's all those things I might have touched on already. It's how do you listen well? How do you not interrupt? Why is it important not to interrupt? Because if somebody feels heard, they feel calmer, that they're less likely to escalate. It's the kind of language you use. Is the kind of language you're using inflammatory? Is it provocative? How do you scale that back? What do you use instead? And then it's about how do your kids hear what you're saying? because children's brains are really different. They haven't developed properly yet. They're in the development mode, if you like. How do we modify what we're saying to make sure what our children say here is nice and safe? So then when you've learned all of that, you can go into step 5, you can make good co-parenting decisions, and that's using tools around how often do you meet, why is it important to meet, don't meet for very long, meet for less time, be very specific about what you're meeting about. And of course, in that, as you would expect, there's a co-parenting plan and how to create one of those. But there's also a co-parenting charter, which is actually, we're in this, how we're going to behave with each other, not just about the decisions we make. And then finally, step 6, which is actually one of my favorite steps. It's called From Surviving to Thriving, which makes it sound a bit like it's all about meditation and breathing. There's a little bit of self-care in there, but what it's actually about is what can you control? What can't you control? Why is it important to invest time in the things that you can control? What are the 4 different types of stress that exist, and how do you mitigate some of those when you're in this situation? So that's the 6 steps. And it's really important to say for anyone that's listening that you don't need to read it or go through the program with your co-parent. It's written and designed for you to go through it on your own, because when we make changes in ourselves, the family system that we exist in, the co-parenting system, will change and it will improve. So we really do like to kind of remind people and lawyers of that.
I mean, just to drill into that, if only one side of the debate is looking at the book and using the tools that the co-parent way provides, surely that creates conflict in the relationship.
Actually, the opposite. In most relationships, if one person modifies, if one person manages what they are saying, if one person kind of holds on to themselves and stays grounded, there's 2 things that happen. The first thing is it takes 2 people to create an escalation, right? So if one person is escalating and the other one isn't, it doesn't go very far, right? And the second thing to say is that if one parent is stable and using the tools and the other is all over the place, that it provides enough stability for the children that they have home, a parent that is able to remain grounded. And that helps the kids resolve conflicts. It helps the kids know that to learn what the correct touch points are. So it's quite critical that we encourage parents, clients to go through it, whether X is going through it or not.
I want to come on to children in just a second, but are the steps linear, or can you sort of dive into them as need be?
I always say that it's much better if you go through them in order, because it is a staggered learning, right? It's built on what's gone before. However, if you are literally in a crisis and you are like, I've got to go for a meeting and I don't know how to do that, you can open the book. Of course you can. These are adults. People are adults. They can make their own decisions. They can use it however it works best for them. And I can't control that. If I could, I would ask everybody to read it literally from cover to cover.
Children are a really, really important part of the methodology, and clearly a very important part in proceedings as well. How, through the course of the book and how through the methodology, do you ensure that children remain at the very centre of your thinking and co-parents' thinking?
The whole book is written with children at the front and centre, so that the whole driving force of the methodology, the online work that we do, and the book is that children are front and centre. They're our end user, if you like. So it's really important and critical even that everything we do is focused on enabling parents to do well enough that they keep the kids safe and stable. So the way that the book is written is constantly reminding parents of that. It's not like I'm not kind of banging on about it in that way, but I am, it does show, it uses examples. We use case studies throughout the book. We use case studies from the parents' perspective and also from children's perspective, so they can share their experience of separation. Some of that is quite emotive and can help drive messages home. And really what I'm here to do, what I'm aiming to do, is to help parents go, okay, you know what? Okay, and I'll just kind of caveat this by saying where it's safe to do so, because it's not always safe to co-parent. Maybe we'll come on to that in a moment. But where it's safe to do so, we have a responsibility as parents to remain parents, okay? And that means modifying our own behavior. And that means for family law professionals, helping our clients remember that actually there are kids in this, and we've all got a collective responsibility to help keep those kids safe.
Throughout the course of the discussion so far, in my mind, I'm hearing that this is all about dealing with quite high conflict situations. Is this as much relevant to people who are really trying to make a co-parent relationship work as it is to people who are in high conflict situations?
Yeah, 100% actually. So we have lots of people coming through the program and learning the methodology who are just that, they've separated fairly amicably and they've come to this point where they know that they need to co-parent, but they're not quite sure how to go about it, what to do. So this is a framework. It's a really nice framework for them to go through. And also, life, unfortunately, is not always smooth. So there will be things that happen on those parents' journeys that are bumps in the road, whether it's a new partner, a new baby, or whatever it might be. It's really good to have a framework that you can fall back on if you need to. Even if you're not in conflict, just a way to navigate, a way to communicate in a way, in respectfully enough to bring up kids.
And you talked about scenarios where the relationship simply isn't safe. How does the book deal with those situations?
Like any of these programs, it's not a one size fits all. It can't be. For anybody that's coming into it with particular safeguarding needs, co-parenting may not be for them. And that's fine. There are different programs that are out there that are amazing that people can go on. We screen people when they come on the program to make sure that it is safe for them to do that. And if it's not, then we will signpost them. We have to, work with people who we can help and enable. And we need to take that really seriously.
And you touched there on new scenarios that might arise, whether it's taking on stepchildren, whether it's a new child in the equation, moving home, perhaps even moving away. What does the book have to say about how those conversations can be had? And more importantly, how does it impact the other siblings?
So I've got family going through the program at the moment who father and son live in the UK and mother and two daughters live in the States. And they've come on the program to make this work, to make this better. The program and the book, because they're the same methodology, help the communication, help understand the importance of putting all the children front and center and creating, if you like, imagine a loop of elastic, a hairband, creating that nice, safe parental loop around the children together wherever they are. And on the program, because there's more one-to-one work, we talk about specific ways that they can do that. And in the book, we will talk more generally about it's how you communicate, it's how you uphold the other parent to the children that aren't with them, and really maintain the fact that parents are parents and your job is not to undermine that. Your job is to support it. Even if you don't like them, it's about being able to say, okay, you know what, they're an all right parent, so I'm gonna help that along.
I'm smiling because that idea that one parent is going to really uphold and support the other, particularly in very challenging separations, that's really tough.
It's really tough, but it's really possible to do it. And that's what I come back to. It's this idea that we have a choice. The example I want to use is when you have kids, when they're born and you hold them for the first time, it's like you get this very fierce, primal feeling of love and responsibility. Okay, that's all consuming. We are designed for that to happen, right? When you do anything to protect them. So as they get older, if they run out in the road, you'd literally run after them. You'd put yourself at risk to go and protect them. It's the same with their mental health, right? Not just their physical health. We have a choice to go, actually, you know what? I need to protect them. So I don't like you, ex-partner. In fact, I really hate you and I don't trust you and you make me very upset. But little Billy is really important and we've got to make sure that little Billy is okay. So we are going to find a way through this. And that's what I want to give people with the co-parenting method book and program, is a way to get to that point. And we do, and that's what happens. That's what we provide.
It's been fascinating to talk around the co-parent way, your methodology, and some of the ideas that are in and around it. I guess on the basis that this is the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, we've got a lot of practitioners that are listening to this. Perhaps they're sat there thinking, why is this important to me? Why is this methodology, why is the co-parent way important to practitioners, Marcie?
So a lot of practitioners tell me they get clients who are in a lot high emotional states. They can't see the wood for the trees. They can't move through the divorce process. They're not, family lawyers don't necessarily have the right skills, tools to do that. They are trained in, they are extremely clever. I couldn't be a family lawyer, right? I have different skills. And it's about dovetailing skills to enable the best service for your clients. I'm a member of Resolution. I sit on Resolution's Parenting After Party Committee. I stand fully behind their code that we have a responsibility to our clients to do that.
And I guess if we're to sort of drill into making the lives of practitioners easier, I don't know whether that's quite the right phrasing, but if there are people going through this process, do you find that they are more amenable to working together through the process of the divorce proceedings, for example?
Yes, certainly. I get a lot of referrals from mediators, and mediators will send their clients on the program before they go to mediation, sometimes as a prerequisite to mediation. And I get a lot of my referrals from family lawyers because it's about recognizing what we can do and what we can't do. So taking someone through a divorce process, a legal process, is a very specific thing, and helping a client heal, find a framework to communicate with this person for the rest of their lives, that's a different thing. And that's what we do. So it's that working in collaboration, I think, is the term.
So I guess in a nutshell, what you're saying is that perhaps practitioners might think about using the book to encourage their parties to think about a more collaborative way of divorcing.
Absolutely. They could gift it to their clients, David.
In the final few minutes of the podcast we have remaining, I guess there's that nagging voice in the back of my head again thinking, yeah, this all sounds great, Marcie, but we've got to win people over. There will be resistance to getting people to adopt this as a methodology. And again, I'm going back to those conflict situations where you've got two people in very entrenched positions, particularly during the divorce process, who think they're in the right, and it becomes a real tug of war between what's my right and what's your right. Do you find that you get resistance to this? And then secondly, if you do, how do you overcome that?
It's a really good question, and I'll answer it really, really honestly. So when we started out doing this work, I was doing one-on-one. So I would work with parents, I'd take them through the process, and I'd work with them separately. And the methodology wasn't quite 6 steps then. So this evolved, obviously, as we learn. What you would find is when you would work with people directly, there would be, they'd still stay quite a lot in their story and in blame mode. And it was quite hard to get them out of blame mode. So what we did over time, we've evolved the program. So the program now is not a one-on-one method. It's a webinar based. Basically, it's a training, it's a learning approach with wraparound care, wraparound coaching. We deliver the learning. We have Q&A sessions, live Q&A sessions. It's all anonymous, so we manage our safeguarding like that. We also very clearly do something at the front end of each week where we look at what has gone well in the last week. So we're creating a positive, forward-looking echo chambers, probably not the right word, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. And what we find is that sense of community, even though they can't see each other and don't know who else is on the program, really drives them forward to making positive change. Now, what I think you're also asking is getting them on the program. When there's resistance, how do you do that? How do you get someone to pick up a book? How do you get someone to go on the program? That's the harder piece. And what I find is with lawyers and practitioners who say to them, okay, you know what? Think 25 years into the future. When your children are adults, what do you want them to say about you? What do you want the relationship with them to be like now that they're adults? How do you want that to work? Nobody, David says, oh, well, I want it to be high conflict and I don't want to have I want to have a really rubbish relationship with my kids. Nobody says that. So when you get your clients to say that, you go, okay, well, do you know what? We can't change your ex, but we can only tweak your own behavior. There's this program, there's this course, whether it's my program or someone else's program. There are things out there that you can do to enable good image, this good projection to happen, but you need to start now. That usually is a thing that enables parents to get to the place where they go, all right, do you know what, I'll try it. As soon as they're ready to try it, then they're in, the mindset starts to change.
I think that is a useful place to end the discussion today. We could probably spend the rest of the day talking about the Co-Parent Way, Marcie, but it's been great to have an overview of what it is. Obviously, all the very best with the launch of the book, and I hope that goes well. And of course, any practitioners then that are interested in this, there's a website that they can go to find out more.
Absolutely. Just go to thecoparentway.com and we can take it from there. But thank you so much for having me and for all your interesting and useful questions.
The Today's Family Lawyer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk. My thanks to Marcie. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.